this fourth Sunday in Lent, I want to preach a relational sermon. God is concerned with our relationships. If we build cathedrals but can't live together in community, if we celebrate beautiful liturgy week by week, yet leave laden with acrimony, when we are called to engage in community, yet the best we can do is purvey peevishness, rancor, and rudeness, God is not pleased, and God cannot bless what is a mess. So this morning I want to call us to clarity. I want us to be clear that the Creator cares more about how we treat one another and how we handle conflict than how much we place in the collection plate. And so the crucial question must be answered today. And the gospel calls us to consider what happens when you hurt someone. So help me preach this morning and turn to somebody and pose the interrogative and put forward the question, how do I face the ones I have hurt? Don't be afraid, turn around. How do I face the ones I have hurt? Amen. Beloved, it is here at the nexus of life and the Gospel of Luke that I was intrigued. For it is here, nestled away in the 15th chapter, that Jesus points out how we need to deal with one another. He gives us a blueprint to help us build healthy relationships by dealing with the issues which block the manifestation of the summation of the law, love your neighbor as yourself. The problem that I find as we ordinary Christians understand ourselves in light of Jesus' blueprint is that we tend to want to identify with the wounded and not the wounder, the victim and not the victimizer. But I submit to you today that we, each of us, has wounded and victimized and hurt other human beings. And so the question, the existential query is, how do we face those whom we have hurt? There is a connection that can be made and an instructive stretch that pulls as we consider Jesus' poignant parable of the prodigal son, one who had left home and, like us, needed to return. I believe that it is in the face of the prodigal that we can begin to understand how we face those whom we have hurt. If you've ever made a mistake, if you've ever gotten off track or off center and out of focus, if you've ever hurt or disappointed or let somebody down, one of the hardest things you will ever have to do is face those whom you have hurt. And essential to our recovery, our redemption, if you will, our starting over again, is facing those whom we have hurt or disappointed. That's why some people are still in their hog pens. They cannot bear the thought of facing those whom they have hurt. after what I said, after what I did, after the way I hurt those people, after the way that I deceived them, how can I look them in the eye again? How can I ask their forgiveness? How dare I ask them for a favor? How can I ask them to give me another chance? Sometimes before we can go forward, beloved, we have to do some backtracking and make some amends. Try to clear up some misunderstandings, rebuild some bridges that we have torn down, and try to clean up some of the messes that we have made. Some of you know that I'm in the midst of a renovation project for an apartment that we have in Hyde Park. It's hard to find good, reliable contractors in this city sometimes. But what I've come to understand, even the good ones and the bad ones, if you watched anybody work on a house, carpenter, electrician, or painter, they can only do so much work and make so much progress without stopping every now and then to clean up the mess he or she has made. I've noticed over the years that if someone is sloppy about cleaning up, he or she will do sloppy work. We cannot have a clean future without pausing to clean up some of our messes of the past by trying to fix some of the tattered relationships and some of the broken promises and forsaken friendships and hearts we have hurt. And if we are sloppy regarding those we have hurt in the past, I submit that we will also be sloppy about relationships that we will build in the future. That was the discovery the prodigal son made in the hog pen when he came, as the Bible says, to himself. He not only remembered the abundance of his father's house, he also thought about how much he must have hurt his father. The young man knew that where he was would lead nowhere but to more disgrace, more wallowing with the hogs, and ultimately death. He realized that before he could get straightened out, he would have to return and face those whom he had hurt. And beloved, that's the decision that each one of us has to make when we hurt somebody. Either stay where we are and be miserable, continue to lose sleep at night, continue to be hypocritical as if the breach we have made doesn't bother us, continue wallowing with the hogs and die on the vine, or get up and face those we have hurt to see if we can fix what's been messed up. The prodigal son decided to go back home on a facing and fixing mission. But look how he goes, beloved. Note the speech that he has prepared. He said, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands." He went with a humble spirit. He didn't return home with a bitter spirit. Life has dealt me a rotten hand. He didn't return with a blaming spirit, accusing other folk for his lack of preparation for the real world. He didn't return with a false spirit, pretending that things were better than they were and he just had a little bad luck. He He didn't return with a demanding spirit or an I'm doing you a favor by returning spirit. When he left home, he was so sure of himself, but when he returned, he was humbled. Oh, beloved, I submit to you this morning that the hog pen will humble you. It's not enough to return. We have to return with the right spirit. A spirit that admits its failures and mistakes rather than one that places blame. A spirit that asks for forgiveness and a second chance rather than one that makes a demand. A spirit that is more concerned with reconciliation than with winning an argument, approving who is right and who is wrong. A spirit that has learned from the hawk pen of life, the hawk pen of one's mistakes, and has not been made bitter by them. If we don't go back with the right spirit, beloved, we might as well stay where we are. For the wrong spirit will make things worse than better. The fact that the prodigal son was humble meant that his pride had been trampled underfoot when he was in that hog pen. Oh, beloved, don't let pride keep you in the hog pen. Don't let the what-ifs keep you where you are. Don't let pride stop you from facing and fixing what needs to be confronted and repaired. Oh, I know pride is keeping many a couple, many a friend, many a family apart. Pride keeps us in our seat when we're invited to be more active in church. Pride is causing some of us to quench the move of God's Spirit in our own lives. What will people think? Pride is causing some of us to miss our blessings. Don't let pride keep you where you are. To face those we have hurt means that some of us need to swallow our pride. In order for the son to think about how much he may have hurt his father, shows something else. It shows that this son was sensitive to somebody else's pain besides his own. I submit this morning to face those whom we have hurt means that we have to be concerned about somebody else's pain, hurt, and heart besides our own. When we make mistakes or when we are harmful to ourselves, our careers, our relationships in our lives, we not only hurt ourselves, we hurt those who love us. Some folk are so wrapped up in their own pain that they think they're the only ones hurting. Some people are so busy singing, "Woe is me," and look at my pain, that they never have time to say, if I can help somebody as I pass along. They never have time to say, I'm hurting, but I know you're hurting too. Let me help you with your pain. Because I've learned that often when we take the time to help somebody else with his or her pain, we forget about our own, even if but for a little while. To face those we have hurt means that we have to stop navel-gazing with self-pity and start looking at others with an eye of compassion. To face those we have hurt, we have to reach a point of maturity in which we realize that we are not the only ones hurting. There's plenty of hurt to go around and not enough healing. So why don't we volunteer to be one of the ones who stand in the gap and say, I'm going to be the one to help with the healing instead of adding to the hurting. That's what makes makes Jesus so special. He doesn't come to add to our hurt, but to our healing. He doesn't come to add to our confusion, but to add to our comfort. He doesn't come to add to our damnation, but to add to our deliverance. So the younger son began to retrace his steps to his father, even though he was in a distant country, or as the King James calls it, a far country. And let me put the kickstand down right here and stop for a minute and say that you don't have far to go to that far country. Here's what I mean. The flow of the narrative of this text can cause us to misread distant country. Actually, it has little to do with physical distance. It's not by our feet, but with our affections that we leave or return to God. The distant country can be just one step away. One step. So close. It's hard to realize that we're there. It's never far to the distant country. And it's reached not by accident, but by choice. Willingly crossing spiritual boundaries and ignoring moral checkpoints. In addition, beloved, there are all sorts of distant countries with many different names. Not just the country of wild, loose, licentious living. You know, so often we comfort ourselves when we read this parable. We comfort ourselves with the vulgarity and coarseness of the prodigal's sins. We see them in lurid, living color. We hear them in digital, quadraphonic sound, the pulsating beat, the hypnotic rap, and we forget that there are all sorts of distant countries. There's the country of material obsession. There's the distant country of rebellion. There's the distant country of alienation, the distant country of deceit and dishonesty, the distant country of squandered gifts and talents. For the fact is, anyone wasting God-given talent, time, opportunity, and capacity is in a distant country. You don't have far to go to the distant country. The journey back to those we have heard from that distant country can sometimes be a long one, particularly if time has magnified misunderstanding, eroded truth, distorted perception, and hardened feelings. The road back is always longer and more difficult than we first imagined, but we have to keep walking. Along the way, doubts will attack us. A second guessing will slow us down. The what-ifs will try to block us, but we have to keep walking. Distractions will arise to turn our heads. Personal problems will surface from nowhere to trip us up, but keep on walking. We will notice hills and mountains on our way back that we didn't notice before. And sometimes we will wonder, even if we're lost, but keep walking. For I believe that every child of God has a compass. Above us is Jesus, the bright morning star. In our hands is God's word. And that's why David said, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Keep walking. So the younger son kept walking, not knowing what awaited him. Lest we forget, beloved, the younger son did not know how either the father or the elder brother would receive him. He journeyed without guarantees. And I submit this morning that so must we. That's why a number of us are hesitant about facing those we have hurt. We do not know how they will receive us. We want to guarantee that people we have hurt will accept us back or be open to hearing us out, or at least trying to build new bridges of understanding and communication. What if I try and they don't receive me or hear me or talk to me? What if I make this long journey and they reject me? Well, I wish I could tell you that every time you make an effort to face those you have hurt, you will be rewarded and accepted, forgiven and restored, and your efforts to make peace and reach understanding will bear fruit. Sometimes you will make this long journey, beloved, and those you seek will not be pleased to hear from you, or will see you and still reject you. According to the scriptures, the elder brother was not pleased with his younger brother's return. He refused to join the celebration that his father threw to welcome his younger son back home. And the elder brother remonstrated with his father. He says, now listen here, for all these years, I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. Oh, then I like what the father said to him so beautifully. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate. We had to rejoice. Because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. And you know what I discovered? The parable never tells us that the elder brother and the younger brother ever made up. Sometimes, beloved, when we make the journey back home, we will meet some elder brothers whose hurt is so deep that they cannot welcome us back. But we still must make the journey. We must make it because our own integrity and redemption depends on it. Even if the other person rejects us, we need to know before we can make a fresh start that we did try. We did our part. We did our best. Before we can shake the proverbial dust from our feet, we first have to get them dusty by trying. When we stand before the judgment seat of Christ, we can face him with a clear conscience and tell him that at least we tried. If there is hurt between us and another person, that hurt can weigh both of our souls down. If we try to heal the hurt and the other person rejects our attempt, we may still feel the pain of rejection and lost relationship, but our record is clear, and our soul is free because we tried. And then we must make the journey back home, because that's the only way we will find out about the Father's love. You know, the focus in the parable is really not only the brother who strayed or the brother who stayed, but the Father whose love was constant. True, there will be some elder brothers who will not receive you. Oh, but there will also be some fathers who will welcome you with open arms. There will be some elder brothers who say, away with you. Oh, but there will also be some fathers whose love is in abundance constant exhibition. And who will say it's celebration time. Get the robe of forgiveness. Get that ring of love that has no beginning and no end, and the shoes of glad tidings. For this, my daughter, my son, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, my friend, my companion, this one was dead, but now is alive. Lost, but now is found. We have to make the journey home, because that's the only way we will discover the Father's love. But you know what else? I'm almost done. We make the journey home because one day Jesus made a journey to us. He did not wait until we found our way back to him. He left his Father's house and came to where we were. He had no guarantee that we would receive him, and we didn't, but he came on anyhow. When the hogs saw him and they tried to destroy him, they crucified him and buried him in the mud. But early Sunday morning, he stood up and shook the mud off from himself and declared, "All power is in my hand." Yes, yes. He put the hogs under his feet and reached down and caught our damaged souls and led us from grime to glory. And I submit this morning to you that he's still in the lifting business.
Yes, yes.
If you give him a chance, he will do it for you. Amen.
Amen.